What's up, everyone, and welcome to MMA Fighting's UFC on Fox 23 post-fight show. I am Danny Segura, and joining me is Marc Raimondi, which is sporting a nice shirt there. He'll be helping me break down all the storylines and all the action that happened in Denver, Colorado. So obviously, headlining the card, we have Juliana Pena, losing to Valentina Shevchenko, somewhat in a surprising way. Obviously, an armbar. Valentina Shevchenko has been known as a striker. What did you make of this bout, Marc?
Well, first, I also want to say good-looking shirt as well. And I really enjoy, Danny, how you pronounce Juliana Pena's name. It is fantastic. Can you give me
Juliana Pena. I'll give it to you. Yeah.
That is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, what a win for Valentina Shevchenko. I think that most people thought that if she were to win this fight, it was going to be knockout. It was going to be a decision. It was going to be something that was predicated on her standing up and winning that way. And that's not what happened. She got an armbar from the bottom and submitted Juliana Pena in the second round of the main event, setting up most likely a title shot and rematch with Amanda Nunes sometime in the probably near future. Biggest win of Shevchenko's career. I mean, I think that the Holly Holm win was obviously super impressive. Holm was the former champ. But to me, this win stands out more so because it showed that she's not just a one-dimensional striker, that she's able to not only grapple with someone who's a very good grappler, but submit them from the bottom. That is not an easy thing to do to someone like Juliana Pena.
Definitely agree with you there. Somewhat of a surprising finish, as you said, because she's been known as a striker. But, she proved she's dangerous on the ground as well. Now, usually we know what the best outcome is for the UFC promotionally. Do you think this was a win for the UFC, having Valentina Shevchenko become that #1 contender?
I think it's fine either way. Whether it was Pena or Shevchenko winning, I think it'll be a similar situation. I don't know if that will be a headline fight either way. I don't think Nunes Shevchenko now is a pay-per-view headliner. Could they put it on Fox? Maybe. I don't know where Nunes is right now as far as being a draw. Yeah, she just beat Ronda Rousey, and a lot of people saw it. I think over 1 million people bought that pay-per-view, UFC 207, last month. So that should help her star power, you would imagine. But Shevchenko is still a little bit of an unknown. Pena, even had she won, is still unknown too in a way, but she would have probably sold – not probably. She would have sold that fight way better than Shevchenko will, which is fine. Shevchenko is not one who's going to sell the fight, at least verbally. Pena would have. So I think that the UFC probably would have liked Pena to win because she really would have sold it. Nunes is doing a better job selling fights now, so she'll probably have to do that now with Shevchenko. But I think it's a co-main event on a pay-per-view somewhere. I don't know if they'll put it on Fox, but it'll probably be like a co-main event. I'd imagine sometime maybe before the summer, sometime May, June. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but that's kind of what I see right now.
Now looking into the future, they had a bit of a weird exchange after the fight. I'm not sure if it was friendly or kind of aggressive, somewhere in the middle. But just give us a prediction looking into the future if Amanda Nunes were to face Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Danny, because they don't do that anymore, at least as much as they used to do it. They used to bring in the champion or the #1 contender on a regular basis into the cage, and I know that when they do that, it kind of pigeonholes them into doing that fight. If something happens, then they look kind of silly because that was just a waste of a photo op or a waste of whatever. But it really worked tonight because both women, they sold it. They really did. And Shevchenko said, well, the next time, we fight, talking to Nunes, right in front of her, said, I'm going to take the belt home. And Nunes said, no, actually, the next time we fight, the difference is going to be that I'm going to finish you. Yeah. And it was a nice little way to sell the fight already. I think they should do that more. I really do. I think that if they know that if it's a clear #1 contender type fight, title eliminator type fight, they should bring in the champion and have that happen. As far as predictions, I don't know. I will say this. If you look at what happened in that last fight, the UFC 196 last March, it was a pretty close fight, but certainly Nunes won the first 2 rounds, but she didn't destroy Shevchenko by any stretch of the imagination, and Shevchenko won the 3rd round, and it seemed like Shevchenko had the momentum at that point. Now, that was a 3-round fight. The next time they fight will be a 5-round fight, and I think that it could favor Shevchenko, at least as far as the cardio and as far as that goes. Shevchenko doesn't cut a lot of weight. I mean, she's someone who's probably more naturally fit to be a 125-pounder. So that is very interesting to me because, if you extend that fight back, last March, who knows what happens? And then we'll get to see that now eventually in the next fight.
Now moving on to the co-main event, a bit of controversy there at the end of the first round. We weren't really sure if the fight was over or we were going to have a second round. A lot of people were saying Donald Cerrone looked out of it and he shouldn't have entered that second round. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think the fight, should have gone on or there should have been a stoppage in the first?
Yeah, I think it should have been over. I think it should have been over. Now, it's a judgment call by the referee, and Herb Dean, although it did look like he waved it off, he gave the signal for the fight is over, not the round is over. He gave the signal for the fight is over. He kind of went back on it and allowed Cerrone to continue. I don't know what the thought process was there. It's not an easy spot for a referee because the bell is sounding, crowd is screaming, there's a lot of confusion, and Herb Dean, who's obviously one of the top referees in the business, he's a pro all the way, makes mistakes just like everybody else makes mistakes. But I thought that the fight should have been over. Cerrone seemed like, that seemed like a TKO. I don't know if it happened before the bell or after the bell or at the bell or how that's supposed to work, but the referee, by rule, stops the round or the fight, not the bell. So it seemed like Herb Dean stopped the fight and waved it off, and it should have been a TKO. Luckily for everyone involved, that Masvidal came back and won the fight in the second round by TKO, so it didn't end up mattering that much as far as the result goes. But yeah, I thought that it should have been stopped at the end of the first.
Now, promotionally, this matchup between Donald Cerrone and Jorge Masvidal, it was a very exciting matchup for the fans, but promotionally didn't make much sense. This was number 5 fighting number 12. Now with Masvidal, pulling off the upset, where is he at in the welterweight division?
Oh, he's right up there. He has to be right up there. And I think Dana White said it at the post-fight press conference tonight. He doesn't like when Donald Cerrone does stuff like this, and meaning Donald Cerrone was in a fight really only a few weeks ago against Matt Brown. It was a hard fight. He took damage in that fight. He got dropped in that fight. And now this is about 5 weeks later, a month later, and he has to fight George Masvidal. That's not an easy task. We don't know if Cerrone is fully recovered. The good thing for him is that he doesn't have to cut all that weight anymore. He has to cut only about 5 pounds to reach 170. So he doesn't have to worry about the recovering from the weight cut. But he took damage. He was marked up in that fight. I don't know how much that contributed, but that's just Donald Cerrone, right? This is a guy that's the reason why fans love him, is because he's going to fight whenever the hell he feels like fighting. He'll probably try to come back now and fight again, in March at UFC 209. We don't know, but that could have cost him here. We don't know for sure what would have happened if both guys had the full training camp. We have no idea. The only thing we can say is that Masvidal looks fantastic in this fight, and I think that he has to be considered as one of those top guys. He has to be considered right up there now. If you beat Donald Cerrone after what Cerrone has done over the last year, you have to be considered one of the best welterweights in the world.
Now, where do you see him going next? Obviously, we still don't know where he's going to place in the rankings, but we obviously can only assume that he's going to go up. What type of opponents do you see him facing in the future?
Well, first of all, don't even talk about rankings because I don't even look at that. Those rankings are a complete disaster. I don't know who is voting, and I don't know who is even where. I guess Masvidal's number 12. I know he wasn't ranked before Ellenberger, but I thought he probably should have been ranked, even though he wasn't. I don't know what they'll do next with him because it seems like, obviously the welterweight title fight is set between Woodley and Wonderboy in March. Damian Maia wants to wait. He wants to wait for the winner of that fight. He's owed a title shot. There's no doubt he deserves it. I would not mind seeing Masvidal fight someone like Nate Diaz or Nick Diaz. If Nate Diaz wants to fight at 170, I don't think anyone will be upset about that fight. Same thing for Nick Diaz against Masvidal. The only thing that would stand in the way, I think, of that fight happening is that it may not be as big of a money fight as those guys want, but I think that Masvidal can have his pick. I really do. I really think that he really could fight any one of those top guys, and I wouldn't be upset. I saw Neil Magny kind of throw his name into the hat for that fight. I don't know if that makes sense necessarily. But there are so many good guys at the top of that welterweight division, and I think that Masvidal is now one of them.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that. Now, somebody else that was moving up the rankings, Francis Ngannou, put on an amazing performance against a former champ and a veteran in Andrei Arlovski, finishing him. Is this probably the best prospect we've ever seen in the UFC heavyweight division?
he's definitely the best prospect since Cain Velasquez. I don't think there's anyone who could dispute that at this point, the way that he knocked out Arlovski tonight in the first round. I thought that was going to be a tough fight for him because under Arlovski, yes, he's getting up there in age, but as far as experience and boxing skills and athleticism, it was by far the toughest challenge of Ngannou's career up until this point, and Ngannou made it look easy, which makes me think that he is now ready for that top tier of heavyweights. The question I think that the UFC has to ask themselves now is how much do you want to rush him? Because obviously this is a guy I think could be a future star. And man, he after the fights tonight at the press conference, he was wearing a 3-piece suit. He was rocking the shades. He was looking swagged out. This guy looks like first of all, he's just a massive human being. Yeah. But the way that he cleaned up with the suit, I was very impressed. He looks like he could be a star in the future. So the question for the UFC now is how much do you want to rush him? What do you want to give him next? He beat Arlovski, but do you want to throw him in there? He threw out the names Overeem and Junior Dos Santos. Do you want to really put him in there with guys of that caliber? I suggested on Twitter Roy Nelson because I think it's a little bit of a step up from Arlovski, but not quite in that top tier of killers with the Verdums and the Dos Santoses and of course Stipe Miocic and Velasquez. A little bit under that, and of course that would be a great fight, right? That would be a fight that would be very, very fun to watch.
Now, let's talk a little bit about his opponent, the man he defeated, Andrei Arlovski, 37 years of age, now on a 4-fight losing streak. Yeah. Is he entering in that territory where, he should hang it up, or do you think he still has some fight left in him and, perhaps continue fighting in the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, I never like to tell a fighter that they should retire. Mm-hmm. I really hate. I see it thrown out quite often, and I understand because this is not any other business. This is fighting, and you don't want to see these people take damage unnecessarily when they're past their prime. BJ Penn was one of those good examples recently where maybe he shouldn't even have been in that fight, but he took damage from a much younger guy, Yair Rodriguez. I don't know. I could understand fully if Arlovski decides to step away now. Like you said, he's lost 4 in a row. But on the other side of the coin is that these guys don't really get paid enough to step away. That's part of the problem, why fighters stick around so long. It isn't like Andrei Arlovski has made all these millions of dollars in his career, and he has this money for his family all saved up, and he's ready to go off and ride into the sunset. A lot of these guys are I mean, they're fighting. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and the only way they get paychecks is through fighting. So I would understand fully if Arlovski wants to come back and fight again in the UFC for sure, because he needs to feed himself and his family, and that's just the realities of life as a fighter. Maybe someone, if he does fight again, maybe someone who's not a 30-year-old hungry, gigantic monster like, for instance, Ngannou in his next fight. But I would fully understand if Arlovski wanted to fight again.
Okay, now opening the main card, a very exciting bout between Alex Casarez and Jason Knight. It ended with Jason Knight, getting his hand raised with a very impressive finish over a veteran in Casarez. What did you make of his performance, and where does he stand in the division?
Jason Knight, man, he's a guy. He's a real guy. He's the real deal. That was a very fun fight. Now I don't think Alex Casarez is the best fighter at 145 pounds in the UFC, but certainly if you beat him and finish him, that means you could be somebody. That means you could be a contender. That means you could be in the top 15, and that's where Jason Knight is now. I think that Bruce Leroy is a little bit of a gatekeeper in that sense, where if you can beat him, all right, now you know that this guy can fight. This guy is on that level. I think Jason Knight is really solid, and people talk about Jason Knight's striking because he's such a fun fighter as far as the stand-up goes, and he likes to scrap and he likes to bring it. But man, that guy's grappling is really good.
Yeah, very good.
Back control and his back takes are really next level, and he really, and Bruce Leroy is not a bad grappler either. And Jason Knight, I thought, looked fantastic tonight. And then, best of all, he calls out Doo Ho Choi afterward, and man, talk about beating a good fighter, finishing him, and then asking for an exciting fight that all the fans want to see. A+ night for Jason Knight tonight. Definitely
an excellent night for Jason Knight. And, calling out Doo Ho Choi, that's very interesting. Jason Knight, I feel like we can label him now as a prospect. He's 24. He's been killing it in the UFC. Doo Ho Choi, although he's coming off a loss, I think he still remains as well in that prospect area. Do you like this matchup next? What do you think should happen, or do you think perhaps they should get built up a bit more?
I do like the matchup next, and part of me, you don't want to kill a prospect because Troy loses this fight, that'll be 2 losses in a row. But I think that it'll be okay in this sense because the top of that division right now is very muddled. There's a lot of people there right now, and one of those guys is probably not going to crack in just yet. So I think the fight makes sense. I think that it's a fan favorite fight. I hope that if it does happen, it's on maybe in a similar spot that the fight between Bruce Leroy and Jason Knight was tonight, opening up a big Fox show, because that's the kind of fight that you would want to present to the biggest possible audience that you can get, and Big Fox is really that. I would like to see that again. I mean, 145. There's so many good fighters in that division. I mean, that division is arguably the best right now in the UFC. People say lightweight, welterweight. 145 is legitimately, even if McGregor never goes back down there, 145 is legitimately one of the top divisions in the UFC. Also, one of the most exciting. I think there's a lot of exciting fights in that division as well. So, I mean, you could almost pick it out of the hat who Knight faces next and have it be a pretty good opponent. But I can't see any reason why they wouldn't. Yeah.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for your insight. As always, remember, follow MMA Fighting for all your coverage for UFC on Fox 23. For Mark, for myself, we'll catch you guys next time, and thanks for watching.